Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I just again want to say thank you to all of our sponsors and contributors for the past 3 webinars we've had over the last 2 weeks. Start off today with a couple prizes. Here we couple of door prizes. Noah, if you want to cue that up. Kelly Smith, congratulations. I think we have one more here. Sydney Hill, congratulations. Well, I just want to welcome everybody to our annual business meeting. But I want to first, we'll start off with Dr. Rick Knight. Let me see here. Dr. Knight is interested in the intersection of land use and land health in American West, a professor emeritus of wildlife conservation at Colorado State University. He received his graduate degree from the University of Washington and the University of Wisconsin. While at the Wisconsin, he was the Aldo Leopold Fellows and conducted his research at Aldo Leopold's farm, living in the shack. Before becoming an academic, he worked for the Washington Department of Game and Fish, developing non-game wildlife programs. Presently sits on a number of boards, including the Colorado Cattlemen's Agland Trust, where he is Vice President of Conservation, the Science Board of the Malapai Borderlands Group, the Land Conservation Assistant Networks, and Rocky Mountain Land Library. For 16 years, he has sat on the board of editors for conservation biology, and for 10 years on the board of editors for the ecological applications. He was selected by the Ecological Society of America for the first cohort of Aldo Leopold's Leadership Fellows, which focus on leadership in the scientific community, communicating with the media, and interacting with businesses and corporate sectors. He has published over 175 papers and book chapters and has co-authored or co-edited 11 books. In 2007, Colorado State University honored him with the Board of Governors Excellence in Teaching Award. He is a 5-time recipient of the Student's Choice of Outstanding Faculty Member in the Warner's College of Natural Resources. And in 2009, he was invited to speak at the Explorers Club in New York City, and in 2011 spoke to the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. Both talks addressed human-land relationships. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Rick Knight. You might have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, thank you, JT and Joshua. And I think my slides are going to come up. And my apologies, you guys, for that far too lengthy introduction. It leaves me with the impression that I must be full of myself. But anyhow, I am really excited to be here with you today virtually. I'm in my office on CSU's campus. It's just so nice to be speaking without a mask. I'm sorry. Well, I'm looking forward to a post-COVID world when we can all get together in person and actually talk about things face to face. But I was asked by Emmett Jordan, and I want to thank Emmett for the incredibly conscientious and thoughtful way he handled me in this invitation and getting me up to the present moment when I get to speak to some of the Colorado section of the SRM members and to the officers before their business meeting. The thing I'm going to be talking about is something, it's really called the Radical Center, but it has its foundations in this rural-urban divide. And my deep convictions that ranchers and farmers actually have a lot to say about this. So let me see if I can advance the slide. I'm trying to advance the slide. Let's see, has anybody got any ideas on this? It's not advancing. Oh,
Dr. Knight, you should be able to control in the lower left-hand corner.
yeah, I just saw that, Noah, and the arrow disappeared. All right, so it did go forward. Got it, Noah, thank you. All right, it's no surprise that America is polarized. In fact, American historians say not since the eve of the Civil War have we been so polarized. And I'm sure when Emmett and I were talking about doing this talk months ago, nobody thought the juxtaposition of this presentation with the election next Tuesday, and nobody saw what is starting to unfold in front of us. And I think we can go back to the words of Abraham Lincoln: a house divided against itself cannot stand. We are deeply polarized. Let me tell you, so I'm going to tell you a little story. 23 years ago, a group of us all across the American West, it was quite a diverse group. We had a rancher, we had a journalist, we had an academic, we had a policymaker, we had a national fundraiser. Anyhow, a group of 7 of us started meeting once a month on telephone calls. And at the time, we were actually concerned. We were, dare I say this, unabashed advocates for ranching and ranchers. Ranching as a culture, the ecology of biological diversity associated with ranching, and the economics, because ranching is a sustainable economy, which means that it flirts with profit and loss in any given year. It's always hovering on that borderline between red and black. Anyhow, we were getting together to see if we could mount a more effective argument with our urban neighbors to talk about the virtues of ranching, that we did not want to lose this because of its cultural, its economic, and its ecological contributions to a West at work. Now, 23 years ago, this is what people were talking about, though this is a much more recent election. This was Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump in 2016. Anyhow, what people were talking about 23 years ago were these red-blue states. And yeah, we can't deny that. These states, they tend to go red or blue because of electoral college votes. But the thing that we stumbled on is just pure good fortune. I think it was probably because of Nathan Sayre was part of our group, and Nathan Sayre, the department head of geography at Berkeley, was then just an unemployed PhD geographer. But somebody, I just can't remember, said instead of looking at the red-blue states, look at the counties, how they show up in these presidential elections. And that's where the light came on. What we have in America is rural counties tend to vote red, Republican, conservative, and urban counties tend to vote blue, Democratic, liberal. So this was the map that really electrified us, because it's just amazing. The vast land area of the United States, if you look at it by counties and national elections, is representative of Republican, red, conservative. And then this tiny portion, certainly less than 20% of America, but where 97% of the population is blue, Democratic, and liberal. And that's where we came up with this concept, and we coined it the rural-urban divide, the red-blue America. So we started monthly calls, and we began in the year 2000 at the turn of a century. We started these monthly conference calls to talk about what to do about this. And then Bill McDonald, who is a rancher and one of the co-founders of the Malpai Borderlands Group, which is a rancher-led collaborative on the Mexican-American border and also on the Arizona-New Mexico border. Anyhow, Bill McDonald had come up with this term, the radical center. And anyhow, after 3 years of these monthly conference calls, we said, well, let's invite a much larger group to Albuquerque, which was kind of a point we all agreed would be most accessible for us to gather at. and let's see if we can come up with some sort of organized response to this rural-urban divide. And the rural-urban divide really caught what we were most concerned about. We did not want these rural ranching and farming communities to be taken for granted by the urban communities, because in those days, and still to the present, we were losing millions of acres of farm and ranch land to residential and commercial development every year. In my state of Colorado, we were losing the size of Rocky Mountain National Park of private ranch and farmlands to housing and commercial developments every single year. And it's not new information to anybody listening to this. If you're going to separate the private from the public lands in the American West, by far the most biologically productive lands are the private lands. And recently we had this amazing article on ecological applications published that showed it is an order of magnitude more productive. The private rangelands are tenfold more biologically productive than our public rangeland. So anyhow, we got this group together. We stuck it out for 48 hours. And at the end of it, we had this modest, we wrote a document, an invitation for all Americans to read, consider, and possibly join this radical center movement. And if anybody's interested in reading the invitation, please go to the Quivira Coalition or just Google invitation to join the Radical Center. We took our inspiration for what we saw as a possible solution to this red-blue divide, this rural-urban divide, these red-blue tribes, this thing that's polarizing America with ever-increasing concern by in the minds of thoughtful Americans. We took our inspiration from Abraham Lincoln. Lo and behold, he said, once upon a time, one of the undeniable truths: laws change, people die, but the land remains. The land above all, the land that we stand on. And so we came up with what we saw as a possible solution to start building bridges. It's called the Radical Center because very few people tend to occupy the middle ground anymore. And you can see that from the House and the Senate, all the way down to county politics. But we thought the center is the place to be because it's where you come together and focus on the things we hold in common. And at the heart of it, we found ranchers and farmers, of course. The Radical Center building bridges around food and open spaces. And I fervently believe this is true. It's based on decades of firsthand experience. I'm going to share a little bit of empirical evidence, but this is by far the most important slide of this brief presentation. Food and open space as the things that can unite our rural and urban communities, and we can be each then thankful for the other for what they contribute. So urbanites, those urban blue counties we saw, covet open spaces and want to know their food is healthy and grown on well-stewarded lands. And guess what? Ranchers and farmers tie down those open spaces, and they're the ones that are producing our food. It's just an incredibly simple concept. But these are things we hold in common. I think we hold in common we have other connections that can possibly bind us. Maybe most importantly is we're all Americans first before we're Republicans or Democrats. But food and open space is something real. It's right, staring us right in the face. So what's the evidence? Briefly, what's the evidence that both urban and rural halves are contributing to this radical center movement to unite America about these twin concepts of food and open space? So what's the urban half doing about trying to conserve open spaces and showing genuine concern about where their food comes from, wanting to know the food is healthy on well-stewarded lands? Look at this increase in land trusts. 1981, we had 370 land trusts. 2005, we were approaching 1,700 land trusts. And most of these land trusts are urban centric. They tend to be organized by urban entities to conserve open spaces, to keep them out of residential and commercial development. Look at open space tax initiatives. This is the statistic I love to share with my students in conservation. We are the good guys. 79% of open space initiatives in 2016 passed. And these are open space initiatives in red and in blue states from coast to coast and all the land in between to generate $3.4 billion for open space conservation. That's 79%. And this is year in and year out, even during the great economic downturn in 2008, 2009. These open space initiatives pass at a higher percentage than school bond initiatives. Americans, and of course, remember, the majority of them tend to be urban. Americans care more about conserving open space than they do for their children's education. So they are in there voting yes, 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 tax me to conserve open space. And then this growth in natural food stores. So what the heck happened? You know, it's about a 20% a year increase now in these grocery stores that are offering natural foods, organic foods, healthy foods, and stuff like that. So it's urban people are voting with their purchase choices. And then these CSAs, all these urban gardens. You know, we had approximately 2 in 1986, 2012, it's over 12,000. It's continuing to grow. So there's plenty of evidence the urban half is very concerned about food and about open space. Now, what about the rural half? Well, I'm Vice President of Conservation for the Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust, now the largest statewide land trust in Colorado, the first statewide agricultural land trust. And incidentally, can I make a plug for a book that we just produced? It's just published by Fulcrum Press, 25 years of keeping working lands in open and working hands. And it tells the story of the Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust. Well, once that first statewide agricultural land trust was formed, virtually all the other Western states have now formed their own statewide agricultural land trust. In almost all cases in partnership with their statewide cattlemen's association. And right now, Port stands at over 1,300 conservation easements. So consider that as 1,300 ranch families have put in perpetuity conservation easements on over 3 million acres of their private lands. Farmers markets, they are ever growing in number. People love farmers markets. They get to go meet the producer and talk about where the food came from, how it was tended, and ask questions, you know, and learn, get to know ag families and stuff like that. And then these rancher-led collaboratives. So the Malpike Borderlands Group is just one of many of these collaborative conservation efforts. Many, maybe most or many of them at least, have bottom-up rural-led initiatives. So anyhow, it's amazing. So I'm going to go back to this slide. Rural and urban people are coming together in America over food and open space. Urban people covet open spaces. They are increasingly interested in knowing their food is healthy and that's coming from well-stewarded lands. And ranchers and farmers are the people that are tying down that open space, keeping it out of further development, and are producing the food. So this is by far the single most important message. To me, the only sad part of this is such an upbeat, positive message, and it's an undeniable truth. The only sad part of me is we're not doing an adequate job in marketing this and sharing this with our urban neighbors. Okay, three final thoughts, and they come from the pen of Wendell Berry, and hopefully all of you know who he is. In my opinion, there's no person writing today in the English language with more relevant thoughts reflecting wisdom of the relationship between people and land. So I'm gonna take a cheap way out. Instead of sharing something that I may have gleaned about this puzzle, I'm gonna take Wendell Berry's words, but they just are full of truth. First one comes out of an essay called The Whole Horse in his book, Citizenship Papers. The most tragic conflict in the history of conservation, Wendell Berry believes, is that between environmentalists and farmers and ranchers. It's tragic because it's unnecessary. So in his words, this red-blue, this rural-urban divide is unnecessary, and I completely agree. There is no irresolvable conflict here, but the conflict that exists, and certainly it does, can be resolved only on the basis of a common understanding of good practice. We need to study and foster working models, farms and ranches that are striving to bring economic practice into line with ecological reality, and local food economies in which consumers conscientiously support the best land stewardship. So in this quote, he's capturing what we need, what we now have. We just need more of it in this radical center for rural and urban people to come together over food and open spaces. The next quote, and this is not in writing. Wendell Berry came to a Quivira Coalition gathering in Albuquerque a number of years back. And he refused to give an address, but he would agree to answer questions. And my wife, Heather, and I were in the audience, so we were trying to write down virtually every one of his answers because they were deep with truth. This is the one I really gravitated to. It's so true. So Mr. Berry said, as important a reason as any to support ranching, farming, irrigating, and logging is that our society will need them as teachers, mentors, and critics. Sorry, I get emotional over this quote. Sorry. As teachers, mentors, and critics in the years to come. And so I'll make light of this by saying you can't do these things effectively by watching YouTube videos. These are to do these things well, this is slow knowledge. It's not fast knowledge. It's stuff we find on cyberspace. This is stuff that is learned over generations and passed on from generation to generation. So sorry about getting emotional about that. I just love that quote. And then, so the last one, the one that I say over and over again, you can't say, so conservation that works is not about conservation just working for the land. It's got to work for people. And Wendell Berry just sunk the stake when he said, you can't save the land without saving the people. To save either, you have to save both. So I like this slide because it's beating the swords into plowshares. So I do think farmers and ranchers have a disproportionate say-so in a future America that gets along better with itself and gets along better with the land that sustains all of us. So Amit and Joshua, that is the end of my talk. If there are any questions, I'd be certainly glad to entertain them. And again, sorry, I got a little bit emotional over this. Thank you.
If there are any questions for Dr. Knight, you can unmute yourself and ask those, or we can move on. And thank you very much, Dr. Knight.
That was a pleasure.
Okay, I will turn it over now to, yes.
Josh, can you hear me at all? This is Kathleen
Yes, we can, Kathleen.
Delzell.
Yes. We can hear you.
Rick, could you, on the slide, okay, slide on conservation easement. Oh, here I go. It says the connection is unstable. Chat, can you break down land trusts? Are there any statistics on land that are not ranching and farming actively?
Kathleen,
Could you hear
I'm
that at
really
all?
sorry you're breaking up.
Kathleen, if you want to
Can
write that in
somebody
the
translate
chat.
the, I'm going to do it right now, Josh. I'll send it to everybody.
Yes, please.
Can the statistics, wait a minute, I might spell things wrong.
Okay, write that. And I'm going to ask another question for Rick real quick here. Rick from Truman Young, we seem to be losing ground in the fight for the radical middle. What are the bright spots over the past few years?
So yeah, it's the example I'm thinking of right now is the Colorado Cattlemen Ag Land Trust. We have a summer barbecue on a conserved ranch in Colorado each year. It's held in August. And we have this huge number of people that come, gather under the big tent, eat steak, dance, and write checks to support the Colorado Cattlemen Ag Land Trust. And last year I was asked to be the MC of that evening event. And it just occurred to me, I said, well, I think I'm going to ask the audience how many of them are from urban areas and how many of them are from rural areas. And so I did, and about half the hands answered they were from urban and metropolitan areas, and the other half said that they were from rural areas. And I just thought that's just, this is just right in our face, a living example. Urban and rural people are driving to Salida, writing checks to try to conserve these working wildlands that ranchers hold down. And the ranch families, of course, you know what they're doing. They are the pig in a breakfast of bacon and eggs, right? They're committed. They're putting these easements on their private lands in perpetuity. So that's just a classic example that in real time, rural and urban people feel this commonality and are willing to come together and share a meal together, dance side by side, and write checks. The disconnect to me is this is not national news, but this is what's taking place on the back 40 all around us. And I just wish we could, I wish all of us could do a better job in sharing these stories with the media. And I wish the media would be more interested in these things. But so that's one that holds on. And of course, every day I work with ranch families through the Colorado Cattlemen Ag Land Trust, the ones that are coming to us and are trusting us to hold the conservation easements on their ranch families' private lands.
Thank you, Dr. Knight. So Kathleen's question is, can the statistics for land trust be separated into lands that are open but not actively used for ranching and farming? Question. Here in southern Colorado, in the western Archuleta County, of 4 conservation easements, only one family raises hay, 2 do summer grazing. Yeah,
so I'm not sure I'm understanding Kathleen's question, but if I am, the Cattlemen Ag Land Trust, our #1 mission is to work with Colorado ag families to do whatever we can to assist them and being passed on to the next generation. There's a lot of land trusts that are interested in protecting open space for biological diversity, for example. That's their primary goal. Whereas the Cattlemen Ag Land Trust in Colorado and the ones across the other Western states, our primary mission is to conserve these working ag lands. And so it is very hard, Kathleen, to break that down. You would have to probably look at the mission statement of these land trusts, and then possibly you could separate those. The Nature Conservancy is interested in protecting these private lands through easements because of the ecosystem services that they generate, including the protection of biological diversity. Now, of course, the easements with the cattlemen are doing the same thing, right? Because they're keeping the land out of development. And those private productive lands are generating ecosystem services, including the protection of our state's natural heritage. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Knight. That looks to be all the questions. There's some thank yous in there for you from a few people. I will try to share those with you later. Would you, last one, would you share that title of the book?
Oh yeah, so the book is 25 years of keeping working lands in working hands. It's the story of the Colorado Cattlemen Ag Land Trust. Just came out. This is actually the Fetcher Ranch near Clark, Colorado, but it's the story of the Colorado Cattlemen Ag Land Trust, and Fulcrum Press is the publisher.
Is that how you get a hold of them? Is it a hold of a copy there, Dr. Knight?
Yeah, I assume, I haven't tried this, but I assume you can probably go to Amazon. The answer to life's perplexing questions always seems to be found by Google.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Knight, again for your welcome and keynote there. I would now like to turn it over to Claire Hydock for our first award today.
Thanks, JT. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, because I didn't think my microphone was working, so I ran home and got another one. No pressure. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire Hydock, and I served on the awards committee with Chairperson Julie Elliott. We had 2 nominees for the Trail Boss Award this year. And since Julie and I knew both of them, and I nominated one of them, we went out to the members for help selecting them. We picked folks who we believe didn't have any affiliation with either nominee, and we want to thank the following folks for serving as our selection panel. They are Tom Roberts, Jim Sturrock, Morgan Wetjay, Wendell Hassel, and Andy Rutherford. So again, we want to thank them for serving and for choosing Monica Klingler, Rangeland Management Specialist on the Grand Mesa, Uncompahgre, and Gunnison National Forests in Colburn as this year's winner. Okay, next slide. How come that's not working?
Lower left-hand corner. There you go.
Okay. After Monica's supervisor retired in 2018, March of 18, the responsibility for managing the Grand Valley Ranger District's whole range program fell to her. And she did this successfully for 2 years until the position was filled, having some relief while detailers were here in the summers of 2018 and 19. During this time, her workload more than doubled, and yet she never complained, and she worked long hours to accomplish whatever her boss or the permittees asked of her. At the annual SRM meeting in February, she helped at the registration table with the companion tours. She read the undergraduate range management exam to a visually impaired student and facilitated many of the sessions. Okay, which button is it again, JT? It's not forwarding. There we go. There must be a delay. Monica has been married to her husband, Javon, for 28 years, and they have 2 beautiful kids, Jesse and Mariah. Family's her whole life, but Monica really enjoys working with the ranchers, managing their livestock, maintaining good rangeland conditions or improving conditions where possible. A favorite day of hers is spent on horseback, riding with a rancher, looking at the country to see what's going well and what needs to be adjusted. Next slide, there we go. In addition to the great work Monica does for the forest and the permittees, she's also served on an FFA Ag Advisory Council, pictured here, conducted several presentations at local high school career days, at state parks, and at the Forest Service Visitor Center on the Grand Mesa. She also serves on her church council. She's worked through some really difficult environmental impacts these last couple of decades. The droughts of 2002, 2012, 2018, and 2020. The West Salt Creek landslide of 2014, pictured here, that killed 3 permittees, and the bull draw fire of 2018. We don't have many pictures of Monica because she's usually behind the camera, but here she is with seasonal range technician Jesse Smith in the center and Colorado Mesa University intern Dakota Matarazzo. Monica was instrumental in getting approval to use sheep to control noxious weeds on the Grand Mesa. She coordinated with Colburn sheep operators Jared and Rebecca Lloyd to use their Shetland sheep as a biological control in 2016 and 17. They were quite effective on oxeye daisy, thistles, and our knapweeds. And here they are munching happily on oxeye daisy. I was happy to surprise Monica last month with the news that she won. I wanted to recognize her in front of her coworkers since we're meeting virtually today. From left to right are Monica, Retta Bruger, who wrote the letter of support, Bob Mosier, range technician for the forest, who works with Monica up in Colburn and who helped with the nomination letters, and me. Monica received this print of the Trail Boss, framed by our very own Colorado SRM member, Roy Roth. And she'll also be receiving a belt buckle. Hers will say hers will say Trail Boss, not President. This is mine. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the 2020 Trail Boss Award winner, Monica Klingler. Over to you, Monica. Try this
You're
again.
on mute.
Over to
There
you, Monica. Round of applause for Monica while we wait. Yep, that's my presentation. What's going on?
Oh, it looked like it kicked her off now. Well, I'll let Monica join back in but in the meantime, we'll just turn it over to Matt Barnes to present our Outstanding Publication or Contribution Award to the section.
Oh, wait. Uh-oh, wait a minute. There.
All right, hello everybody. Wow, it is sure hard to come after Rick Knight and an award presentation to Monica Klingler. But gosh, I love these awards because it's when we get to share the love. So this is the Outstanding Publication or Contribution Award. And so when we first created this award, it was intended to go to the most outstanding achievement related to Colorado's rangelands and or by a Colorado section member in the last year. And so far, as expected, it's gone to publications, mostly peer-reviewed publications, which are the way we primarily express scholarly achievement in this profession. Last year, it was a really cool thing that we were able to give it to this book, Grazing the Fire, edited by a Colorado section member and with many very interesting rangeland science poems written by SRM members and even published locally here in Colorado. So this year though, 2020, the greatest contribution to our profession was not exactly published, but hosted by the Colorado and Wyoming sections, the groundbreaking out-of-the-box annual meeting in Denver. As meeting co-chair Julie Elliott put it, the whole idea was to, quote, turn the annual meeting on its head. She and co-chair Chuck Butterfield, along with the Central Planning Committee, did exactly that. The program was developed based on a survey of SRM members developed by Haley Wilmer and Justin Durner. Changes involved things like more plenary sessions, fewer concurrent sessions, the debut of campfire presentations, and symposia with more emphasis on audience participation, a grasslands expo targeting non-members such as open space professionals, and the inaugural range practicum, a hands-on land and livestock training held at the National Western Complex. Overall, the meeting was more participatory and more of a two-way flow of information as distinguished from the traditional top-down flow from scientists to practitioners. This is a significant break from tradition. And as many of us in this profession know, traditions can be both beautiful and barriers. We've spent decades advising ranchers to break out of their molds, but with the 2020 annual meeting, we broke out of one of our own. So this award goes to the annual meeting and specifically to.
Oh, Matt, you're on mute. Matt, you'll have to unmute yourself. You just got muted. Sorry.
Oh, I just got muted. Okay, so I don't even know where I got muted, but
right where you were announcing.
okay, so I don't know if you heard everything or most of what I said, but this year the award goes to the 2020 annual meeting and specifically to the co-chairs, Julie Elliott representing the Colorado section and Chuck Butterfield representing the Wyoming section.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Chuck. Congratulations to you guys. So now I guess we, if Chuck, Julie, you have anything that you would like to say?
Yeah, I would say thank you very much, Matt. That was that made it sound really grand. I do appreciate that. It was a tremendous experience, and we could not have done it at all without the great people that we had around us. And I just thank you all.
Yeah, I want to echo what Julie just said there. Really appreciated Matt. Looking forward. It was a huge team effort, and that we couldn't have done that without the team that we had from Wyoming and Colorado both. So, it was a wonderful experience. Julie still thinks I'm going to do it again in 10 years, but I hate to break it to her this way. But especially, thank you to Julie keeping things on track and persevering through there. Great, wonderful woman to work with and great section to work with as well. So thank you guys. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Congratulations, guys, again. And thank you, Matt, for the nomination and the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Matt.
We'll go ahead and move on to our appreciation awards. Usually every year we give some appreciation awards out. I would like to, usually in person, but I would like to recognize Claire Hydock for her past 3 years of service to the section as president-elect, president, and then this year serving as past president. Thank you very much, Claire. And then I'd also like to thank and give a certificate of appreciation to Courtney Hurst and Andy Leininger for their service as on the board of directors for the last 2 years. Thank you very much for getting all the board meetings and all your input and expertise to the section. To Amanda James and Alexis Emsel for serving as the CSU presidents for the CSU Range Ecology Club, and automatically they're also on the board of directors when president of the CSU Range Ecology Club. I just want to thank you both for the service that you are doing to CSU as well as to the section. And congratulations on both of you graduating from college. And then lastly, I would like to thank Vicky Trujillo on behalf of our Colorado section for all the work that Vicky has done for the national section as well as for the Colorado section over the past years of service. Just anything we always needed. Thank you, Vicky, for always helping us out. Emmett, did you have anything, and Julie?
Yep, thanks, JT. I'd like to thank by thanking all of our webinar presenters. The attendance has been a tribute to their work and their commitment to our rangeland communities. And I'd like to thank them for sharing their time and talents. It's been an honor to work with each of you, and borrowing from Clay Connery, a virtual hat tip to each of you for providing the inspiration for this meeting. I'd also like to give a shout out to George Sickler and his team at Mountain Media for helping us create the 3R Ranch and Pooter Learning Center videos. Very nice work, George and family. Our Colorado Section annual meeting wouldn't have been possible without the amazing support of our sponsors. The Colorado State Land Board and the West Greeley Conservation District jumped in early and then graciously stayed with us as the meeting world turned upside down and the Colorado Section Board made the decision to pivot to a virtual meeting. Similarly, Western Sayre and Don Ehar of Pawnee Butte Seed stayed with us as the plans continually shifted. Back in March, when doing a virtual meeting still seemed like a new and unknown thing, the Colorado State Conservation Board came to the rescue, providing software resources and invaluable staff time to help create what became our webinar series. More specifically, Noah McCord, who was just starting his new role as the Regional Field Specialist for the Eastern Region for CSCD, agreed to be our Zoom producer. I'm not sure he knew what he was quite getting into, but he has spent countless hours, including nights and weekends, helping to create and produce these webinars. Noah, would you come out from behind the curtain for just a moment? So we can see you.
There.
Yes, no?
I can see me.
Okay, both personally and on behalf of the Colorado section, thank you, Noah, for everything you've done. Lastly, I'd like to thank my son, Wyatt Jordan, for writing and performing most of the music for the pre-webinar intro sequence and serving as an assistant to the producer during the webinars. Very cool stuff. Julie, if you'd take over the meeting, that'd be great.
Emmett asked if there were some people that ought to be recognized as part of the 2020 efforts. And so I plowed through the chairperson roster that we had, and I had this list of folks that contributed. This by no means is an exhaustive list, because there are folks that gave a tremendous amount of time at the meeting or behind the scenes or on particular small or pointed tasks, but these are the folks that really stepped up, and they were included on our Central Planning Committee list as people that we were counting on to carry a major burden for the meeting. So I want to thank Dan Nozzle and Josh Saunders, Ben Berlinger, Haley Wilmer, Sylvia Hickenlooper, Rob Alexander, Cindy Villa, Roy Roth, Matt Barnes, Sammy Diner, Randy Randall, Casey Dollarshell, Savannah Peg, Andy Leininger, Monica Klinger, Claire Hydock, and Daryl Bennett. Thank you very much to all of you. The meeting would not have happened without each and every one of you doing everything that you did, seen or unseen. And that goes for all of you whose names are not on this list as well. It would not have happened without all of you, and deeply, deeply, sincerely grateful to everybody. And Claire, I'll pass it on to you.
All right, thanks, Julie. Well, we've got one more award to give out, and I have the pleasure of giving that out. We want to give an award to Josh Tashiro for his leadership as serving as president. this last year and hand the torch over as he moves into the past president role as I move out of it. Josh, we really do appreciate your leadership, your commitment. You've been involved with the Colorado section for many years, and we hope you stick with it for years to come. You've got big shoes to fill, but I'm sure that Emmett and Retta after you will do a great job, and we're all here to help you. So in your role as past president, congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank
Do
you
you have
very
any
much,
words?
Claire. Thank you very much, Claire. I just,
Welcome.
Emmett's already blowing it out of the water. And so
Yeah, raised the bar a little high this year, didn't he?
he did. Awesome.